Welcome to Quizzing in America. My name is Jeremy Conman. I am a local trivia enthusiast and have run my own trivia company out of Chicago, Illinois for the last 15 years. The idea behind Quizzing in America is every episode, which is going to be weekly, we are going to bring you a trivia host from somewhere around North America, learn a little bit about them, how they got into the business, what they do, what their process is, and then they're going to present a quiz. And there's no better way to kick things off than to start with one of my all-time favorite trivia hosts anywhere that I've ever played. And I have played all over the world, and I've played in almost every single state in the United States. I've got 4 more to go to knock out all 50. I am talking about the one, the only, Johnny Goodtimes from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the city of brotherly love. Welcome, Johnny. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
All right. What's up, brother? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to start off simple. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then once we get done with that, hopefully you'll have a little quiz you'll present to us, and I'll try and answer, and people can play along and see how they do against me. And, you know, future episodes, maybe I'll have folks on to play with me or against me. We'll see how that goes. But, okay, how long have you been doing this, first of all? When did you start doing trivia?
I started doing trivia in 2002. So I have been at it quite a bit. I think I have a pretty fair claim to have hosted the most Quizzos, pub trivia events, pub quizzes, whatever you want to call them, in the United States, because I've been doing it weekly for 23 years now. So
yeah, you've got to be right up there. I know there's a company out of Georgia called Team Trivia, but the guy that owns that, I don't know how long it's been since he's actually hosted an event, right? So you still get out there and host pretty regularly, right?
Yeah, so I'm still out there 2 to 3 times a week. Now, at my peak, I was doing 8 a week when I was young and had that kind of energy.
In fact, you won't remember this, and I don't actually remember the exact year, but so I started hosting trivia in 2009, so I'm a little behind you, and I've hosted quite a few events myself. But once I started hosting in 2009, every time I would go somewhere, I would try and find a trivia night and see what somebody else does. And that's where I first found you. As I was in Philadelphia, I went out for a Phillies game, and I played a game. It was probably in like 2011 or something like that. And I think it was one of the nights where you had 2 gigs and you were going from one bar to the other. And I think I was at the early bar. So I wanted to chat with you, and you had to take off because you had to go host a second gig. But I just remember, I mean, at that point, you were one of the best I'd seen. And then I got to know you a little bit better through competing in Geek Bowl, which was a big national event you used to always go to. And they always used to give Philly a lot of love.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, this guy really knows his stuff. And you're such a, you know, you've got such personality. Were you an entertainer? Were you in theater? Were you in radio, TV? Like, do you have a background in improv?
Yeah, I mean, I had done, I had studied to go into TV and radio in college, and then I actually worked at a dolphin facility in Hawaii for a few years. So that put me in front of a crowd every day. So I've always been pretty comfortable being in front of a crowd. And then when I started, and I worked in the restaurant business before this, so I was always waiting tables. So I've always felt comfortable being in a crowd of people, being in a bar. So it was kind of a natural thing for me to do this. I mean, it was kind of like, I've done some stand-up comedy in my younger years. I mean, it's always been something where I've enjoyed. I'm kind of a control freak, so I enjoy being in control of the room. I think that's
fair enough. And you know what? I think that lends itself well to doing this, because I think I'm similar in that I like to kind of like run everything. I don't like to necessarily delegate sometimes. And it's like, the more control I have, the better it is. And yeah, so I totally get that. Now, when you started doing this in 2002, what got you into it? Did the bar want a trivia night? Did you say, hey, this would be fun? Like 2002, I don't know if I knew there were bar trivia nights, right? That was something I had not really heard of.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost unheard of, and I don't know how deep you want to dig into the history of it, but as far as I know, it really got its start in America because a guy named Pat Hines, he fell in love with a girl from Ireland, and he flew back to Ireland to, rendezvous with her, and stumbled into a pub in Ireland they had pub trivia, and his mind was just absolutely blown. And he came back, he was a teacher, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to do this at, I'm going to host this thing at a bar in Philly." And, we're going back to the midnight, like 94, I want to say here. So I kind of think of Philly as sort of the ground zero of pub trivia. There might be some other alternate, I mean, part of what's fun about it is that the start of it's not like, well documented, so it's like,
Sure,
oh,
absolutely.
there's a certain level of legend to the whole thing, which I enjoy being a small part of. But like, I think that it kind of got its start here. He ran a couple of week. Another guy in Philly who was a kind of a legend here, Irish John, used to host the quiz. And his angle was he would basically just yell. He kind of played a character. It wasn't really who he was. He's actually a really nice guy, but he played this character of this angry, drunken Irishman who was just hosting a quiz, but completely ripping the contestants. And I went to one of his quizzes before I knew him. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. What if somebody hosted this but was nice to the contestants?
And yet still funny. Like that's the
Right.
thing is I've seen you host. You are a nice guy, but you have a sense of humor. You make people laugh, and it doesn't come off as rehearsed or like you're practicing a stand-up routine, which is one of the things I like least about some pub trivia hosts is some of them look at it as like, oh, I'm practicing my stand-up. I've got this joke that I wrote that I want to work and I'm going to make it work. With you, it seems like a more natural, I'm just out there having a good time on the mic, having fun with folks.
Yeah. And I think, especially in Philly, that this is a rat race Northeast. They want to get to the point. They don't
Yeah,
want you
that is
regale
very
them,
true, especially in Philly.
regale them with tales from how you're connected to the answer to the trivia question. They don't give a shit.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
come on, crank them out, baby. So
absolutely. And
it's definitely that's definitely part of it. Is that I think in and this too, you have to give the crowd kind of what they want to have longevity in this thing. I think simply asking trivia questions is not a viable long-term business model. I think you also have
yeah, no,
a
you've
certain
gotta
amount of
you've
customer
gotta cater
service.
to an audience to a degree,
Right.
and you've got to make sure people are having a good time and they want to come back because that's what's going to keep a pub having a trivia night, right? They don't want a crowd that doesn't come back every week. They want people in there. So did you have like a local pub after you saw this guy host and you're like, I want to, I can do this. It'd be better, and go to your local pub and say, hey man, why don't we do a trivia night? I'll host it. Or was there a bar that was looking and they're like, hey man, we're looking to do this. Do you know anybody, or like what was the? Do you remember even? It was over 20 years ago now.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I worked at a restaurant, which this is pretty amusing. I worked at a restaurant called the City Tavern, which was a more or less theme restaurant in conjunction with the National Park Service. So I had to dress up in like
Dress up in
real outfits
outfits.
and, serve people food. And there was a bar right down the street from that called Nick's Roast Beef. And we used to always, as a staff, go in there for our staff drinks after we got out of work. So just kind of knowing the owners down there, I pitched them actually at first the idea of a sports quizzo, and they really liked the idea. But the problem was with sports quizzo, you get a 90% male audience, and that's not what a bar wants.
Yeah,
Like these things build on themselves, right? Like at bars, like you know, a lot of times men want to meet women at a bar, women want to meet men at a bar, and you don't want to go too heavily one way or the other. So you tend to kind of want a more of a mixed crowd. So having 95% dudes wasn't really cutting it, and it just wasn't overly popular. And then one day I was just like, hey, why don't we try a regular quiz? And the guy was like, yeah, give it a shot. And we tried a regular quiz, and that quickly picked up steam, and within a year I was in like 6 bars.
yeah, and I've tried sports quizzes before, and if you're an avid sports fan, you love that stuff. Hey, Pepper, welcome. My cat has joined the conversation. My other cat is to my right, Smokey. So we may get some cats, but no, like if you're a real sports trivia nerd, you're going to do well at a sports trivia, event. But there's a lot of people that think they know sports, and then you start asking them questions, and it's like, ooh, that's a lot harder than I thought. So doesn't always play as well. Now, the name Quizzo, is that something you came up with, or is that because I know there's a Detroit Quizzo, and I know the guys that run that, and I've seen the name Quizzo before, but you were the first place I saw it.
So Quizzo is a Philadelphia term, and I think anywhere that you see it outside of Philly, I would bet good money the person that started that company came from Philly. Because
Okay.
most places call it, even in Ireland, it's pub quiz. Uh,
Yeah.
so most places call it pub quiz, pub trivia. Philly, it became Quizzo, and this is kind of a funny story too that I've heard. I don't necessarily know it, but I've heard the story. So, well, I know that when Pat Hines came back, he was hosting at the New Deck on UPenn's campus, and he was hosting it. This woman walks in, and back then it wasn't, this wasn't really a known thing. Woman walks in, she goes, "What are you guys playing bingo?" And Pat Hines, just off the top of his head, said, "No, it's Quizzo."
Oh,
And
all right.
and so the name stuck. He actually trademarked Quizzo, and then Irish John, to avoid the trademark, called it Quizzo with two Z's. So
Very clever.
yeah, so that's how it has more or less become Quizzo with two Z's out of Philadelphia. And like I said, anything you see that uses the term Quizzo is almost certainly went to that city from Philly, because everywhere else it's pub quiz or pub trivia.
Now, speaking of Philly kind of being the genesis of all this, and while there may have been other trivia nights, one thing that I think really Philly can take the claim for is, one of the largest trivia outfits in the country, and I mentioned Geek Bowl earlier, has been Geeks Who Drink. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that John Dicker, who started Geeks Who Drink, was inspired by your quiz, right? Didn't he used to come in and play your quiz, and that how he got into like the trivia business, or
Yeah,
am I
so
mistaken there?
I don't know what his first, I don't know what first happened, but yes, he did. He and I kind of struck up a friendship early, 20 years ago, when he was basically hosting like two of them in Denver. And now he's an East Coast guy, he's from New York. So, he basically figured I'll go out west and start this thing. And, as time went on, was able to really turn it into something big. And like Geek Bowl was sort of, he attended Quizzo Bowl to kind of get the
Okay, that's what it was. I knew that. Okay, Quizzo Bowl was like the inspiration for Geek Bowl.
right. So he came east to check out Quizzo Bowl, see how I did it, and then he kind of took it to the next level of, whereas my thing was at that time 300 people, mostly from Philly. He came up with a thing that was 1,500 people from all over the country.
Yeah,
But that's a thing where I think part of what I like about the Quizzo world is that, for the most part, now this might be changing some, but for the most part, it's not a bunch of corporate assholes, trying to, gain leverage or try to crush somebody else doing it. It was always, at that time, 20 years ago, it was all a collaborative thing. It was a bunch of guys who didn't want real jobs, you
yeah.
know?
Well,
And
to a
so
large degree, I think it still is.
I think that spirit has for the most part pervaded as it's grown across the country. Not, of course, there are definitely some areas of the country where it's a corporate thing where people are making, real money by running a lot of these. But I even think that with Geeks Who Drink, where they, I don't know how many they have now, but at one point had over 500. I think it was very important for them to have that sort of spirit of, yeah, we're a big company, but we're still your corner bar. We're
Yeah,
not coming into this thing like, like we're a bunch of dudes from, Bank of America going into trivia. It was a thing where, hey, let's have some fun. We'll just tie a bigger thing under one umbrella.
yeah. And there's still a handful. I mean, there's a handful of the big national companies. You have your Geeks Who Drink, your Sporkle, Challenge Entertainment, Team Trivia, as I said, from Atlanta. They actually may be the one place that may have started Quizzo or trivia before Philly, because I think they date back to the early 90s. Although I've never actually met the guy that owns Team Trivia, and I'd love to do that. I've played at their original location, which is Manuel's Tavern in Atlanta, which is near the Carter Library. Anyway, we'll get into the more history. So let me ask you this: you got to write questions. You're writing questions all the time, I assume. How do you? Do you have a process that you go by? Like I know when I first started, if I had a roadblock, I would be like, oh, today is February 20th. Let me look at the February 20th wiki page, see who was born today, and start writing questions about that or see what events happen. Do you have a process that you go by? And how do you make sure you're writing questions that are going to appeal to, listen, we're both middle aged white dudes, right?
Right.
And as we get older, the people coming into the bars don't always stay the same age. You've got
Right.
kids now coming in playing who were born after the year 2000, who
Right.
never lived a day in the 90s. You ask about the TV show Friends, even though it's kind of iconic and it stayed somewhat relevant, many of them may have never seen Friends, right? So, or something like that. So what's your process in coming up with questions, material? How do you try and make it diverse and appeal to a broad audience?
Well, let me start by saying this. I have people playing my quiz now who weren't born when I hosted my first quiz.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Right. So,
So, so yes, it is definitely more of a challenge now because, when you're in your 20s and your peer group is also the people playing, it's really easy to tap into their minds and know what they're talking about, thinking about, what's at the forefront of life for them. Whereas now, obviously, I don't have a lot of contact with people in their 20s. I mean, I just turned 50. So it is somewhat of a challenge. I think the thing that is definitely helpful is having a music round because music, it's pretty easy to see, okay, what's at the top of the Billboard charts and, what are people paying attention to. I think you kind of have to stay on top of things on social media, even though it's turned into such a shitstorm. I think you kind of have to keep an eye out on what people are talking about and what's going on. And I think that then ties into how you write your questions. So I think there's certain generic things you can work through all year round, right? Like the week before St. Patty's Day, I'm probably going to do songs by artists with green in the name. Like there's always going
yeah.
to be those certain universal themes that you can tie in whenever. But I think that, yeah, I'm the same as you. I mean, Wikipedia is really like the holy grail for quizmasters. I mean, it's it's a fun part of the job in that you can go down these wormholes as you're researching questions and you can start to research a question because hey, it happened on this date, but then you learn something new that kind of blows your mind that's kind of different. And I'll even give you an example because that happened this week when I was writing my quiz, and I'll see if I can find it. But there was somehow it was, I can't remember if it was his birthday or what. But hold on just a second. Let me find this question, and then I'll ask you the question, and then I'll give you a little back.
Sure. Fair enough. Yeah.
What?
I was just, oh, did you find it?
Yeah, what car company's symbol of a black horse was inspired by the logo on the side of Italian flying ace Francesco Baracca?
I would assume that would be, I mean, Ferrari's an Italian car. They have a horse, right? So it's got to
Yeah,
be Ferrari. But yeah,
right.
like I had no idea that was the origin story behind that logo, right?
Right. So that's a really fun part of the job is that, I might stumble across an article about, the guy that founded Ferrari. And then next thing you know, I'm learning about Ferrari. And then next thing you know, I see a picture in 1918 of that, iconic Ferrari horse, but it's not on an airplane. It's not on a car, it's on an airplane. And
Yeah.
it's like, and it's like you go down these wormholes and then you get excited even after I've done this over 20 years. It's still exciting to like learn that and then have the opportunity to pass it on through the quiz. So like I would say that, yeah, like going into Wikipedia, starting with kind of, this week, I'll go through the week of whatever the quiz is. starting with that week, if people want to study for my quizzes, I think I'm giving you a little help here. But like,
Sure.
look through things that are happening, but I might not end up writing a question about those things. Those are just the starting point for the question.
Yeah, and then you never know where those tangents are going to take you. Now,
Right.
let me ask you this. So, over the years, you've written so many questions, you've learned a lot of fun facts. I'm sure some of them you've forgotten. Some of you, do you have an all time favorite trivia question or trivia fact or anything that you just like, oh my God, I can't believe that's a thing, or
I mean, I don't think I have a favorite. I'm more of a fan of themes. I have favorite themes that I've done through the years that I really enjoy because I like seeing the thought process, like, like for example, before and after rounds. Like I love writing before and after rounds. I love the thought process that gets you to the answer, both when you're writing the question and when people are answering it. You can see them thinking through, and that's kind of the fun of doing that. But like, I'll give you an example, not a before and after, but another round that's one of my favorites I've ever done. My crowd is I'm a huge fan of old school hip hop. Most
yes, I'm aware of
Yeah,
that.
most of my crowd does not share that love, but I like to tease them by incorporating it into quizzes. So I'll give you a little run through from one that quiz I did last year, and it was a rap round, which gets groans from a lot of the audience because they don't share my love. But the answers have a rapper's name in them, but the questions have nothing to do with rap.
Oh, so you're asking like, about the company Timbaland or,
Oh, right.
the
So this is also called the Malleus.
yeah, the hammer.
Right. John
Yeah.
Dillinger was known as this.
Public Enemy.
A male mallard is known as this.
Drake.
The whiskey ball is really just a large one of these.
The what ball?
The whiskey ball.
The whiskey ball. Just a large one. I don't remember what the whiskey ball is. I think I'm going to strike out on that one. What's a rapper I can an M&M? I don't know. Was it a large M&M?
The whiskey ball is really just a large ice cube.
Oh, duh. See, I'm not a drinker. Yeah, but listen, I love questions like that where you ask it, I'm lost, I don't know the answer, and then you tell me the answer, and I'm like, well, I'm the idiot that should have thought of that. That to me is a great question, right? When you can tell somebody who misses the question the answer, and they think, oh, definitely should have come. I mean, rapper.
That's the goal. I mean, to me, anybody can ask something that nobody's going to know, right?
Sure.
Like that's the easiest thing on earth. I can, ask you what brand of crackers I have in front of me, right? Like,
Yeah.
you might get it, you might not, but you're just guessing. That's not great trivia.
Yeah.
What great trivia is when you're hosting the quiz and you get it, you give the answer and half the crowd groans audibly. That's when it's like, boom, that was a great freaking question. Because if I hear
Yeah.
the crowd mad at themselves, I did my job.
Yeah, I like to call it the difference between trivia and trivial, right? There's
Right.
trivia, which is kind of interesting stuff that you can figure out or maybe know. And then there's trivial, which is stuff that you might happen to know, but you're never going to just get there. And I think it's okay to have a question or two like that in a set, maybe depending on what the type of question is. But you don't want those to be the regular questions. You want the regular questions to be the ones that, like, even when you don't know, you can get there. And
You
if you
can get
don't
there.
get there, when you hear the answer, you're like, I should have gotten there.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing I've always tried to do is I'm going to put a hint in the question that's going to help you get there even if you don't immediately know the answer. Right? Like I'm
Yeah.
like like as an easy example, I typically wouldn't ask who's our fourth president. I mean it's easy, we all know, but I'm just giving you an example. I'd say our fourth president has a college named after him in Virginia, right? So that way
Sure.
even if you don't know James Madison, you can think, okay, which presidents have colleges named after them in Virginia? And that way you can get to the answer without immediately knowing the answer.
Yeah. Well, as an example, so I've been doing this 15 years, and I remember the very first quiz I did. Here is a question that I wrote and I asked, and it's one of the worst questions I've ever asked. And it was literally 15 years ago this week. So it was the week of President's Day. And it was the Wednesday after President's Day, and I asked, President's Day is in February. How many U.S. presidents were born in February? Nobody is going to know the answer to that question. It's a horrible question. I
Right.
should have never asked it. And people were mad at me, and I didn't understand. It was the first time I ever hosted. And then I went back and I thought about it, and I said, boy, if I'd have said President's Day is in February, there were 4 U.S. presidents who were born in February.
Right.
For 1 point each, name them. You know, everybody should get the 2 that we see on all the sale posters, right?
Right.
Washington and Lincoln. Like, that's not. And then if you're old like us, you might remember that Ronald Reagan was born February 6th because we lived through the Reagan years. And, then the fourth one is like, okay, now you got to take a shot in the dark and hope you get lucky. By the way, for those listening, William Henry Harrison was also born in February. So,
Yeah.
but like asking people to give me just a random number, it was like, okay, pick a number between like 1 and 40, and you can make a logical guess, but nobody's going to know the answer to the question, and it's a bad question.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. It's you have to deconstruct these questions and you have to work backwards from what the players are thinking as they answer them. And
Yeah, and
you
that is
just gave a
definitely a
great
lesson.
example of that right there, which is the first way of asking the question is bad because the first response from the audience is, holy shit, who's going to know this? And that's what you want the first response to be.
Yeah, you want it to be like, oh wait, I've heard of this, or I can
Right,
wait.
right,
Let
exactly.
me,
Yep,
I was this old when this happened, or I
right.
know that this happened, and you want people to be able to relate to the stuff you're asking. Now, we all do it. We all write some duds, some bad questions. Sometimes we get a fact wrong. When that happens, when somebody comes up to you and says, and sometimes they come up to you and they say, oh, this is not right. Is your attitude immediately like, all right, don't f with the quiz master, or do you have like, is there like a, oh well, show me what you got, like how do you handle people that are, I guess, maybe somewhat vocal about their disagreement with maybe some of your questions or facts?
Well, it's kind of funny because when I started, it was before iPhones. So,
Oh, sure.
so back then, my rule was, I was very upfront about my rule. Whether he's wrong or he's right, the quiz master is always right. So that
Fair
was
enough.
that was a strong rule that I got out front of, and that way people knew, they could bug me about it, but it wasn't going to change anything. Now, with the advent of the iPhone, obviously I can go quickly figure out if you're wrong or right. And if
Yeah,
you're, I'll typically give you credit unless the question
somehow
like
precluded her
you
from.
right, like say you have a song with 2 artists on it, right? Like this happened this week. There was a song with 2 artists on it, but the topic was artists who have changed their names.
Okay.
And the one artist had changed his name and the other artist hadn't. And somebody came up and complained and said, hey, Travis Scott is on that song. And I'm like, yeah, great, but Travis Scott never changed his name. So,
Yeah.
so it's like you still kind of have to play it question by question in terms of what I'm going to give you credit for and what I'm not going to give you credit for.
Yeah, I one of my favorite. I had a woman who was very inebriated at one of my earlier quizzes, and the question was, there are 4 state capitals that are alliterative with the state that they're in. Give me, name those states or capitals. I'll take either one. And so I gave the answers: Oklahoma City, Oklahoma; Indianapolis, Indiana; Honolulu, Hawaii; and Dover, Delaware. Those are the 4, right?
Good
And
question.
I had a woman come up to me, and she was very upset, and she said, you're missing one. And she goes, and you'll appreciate it, she goes, you don't have Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I said, well, I said, first off, I said, Philadelphia, not the capital of Pennsylvania. And I said, secondly, I think technically, even though they both start with P, not alliterative because they're not the same sound, but I'd
Right.
have given you that if Philadelphia was the capital. But I'm afraid you need to go look at your map of Pennsylvania, and you'll find that Philadelphia nor Pittsburgh is the capital of the state of Philadelphia. So, but yeah, so it's always fun, and I like to try and treat everybody with like, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but this is why I have. And most people are very cool. If they disagree with you, they'll see your point. And listen, if I've made a mistake, I'm like you. I'll give you credit now that we have the iPhone and we can check everything, right?
Right.
So, Now, do you have like all time? Do you have an all time favorite, like the Sofa Kings? I know those guys are legends in the Quizzo scene, and just won the most recent Quizzo Bowl. I think was their sixth or seventh win or something like
Yeah,
that.
seventh Quizzo Bowl win this past Sunday in overtime. Obviously, I was, as always, rooting hard against them. They've always been
I
kind of
always root
my,
against the teams
yeah,
that dominate as well,
yeah,
but they're good. I've met
yeah.
those guys. They're great guys.
Yeah, Sofa Kingdom, those guys are legends. In fact, I would encourage anybody that's nerdy enough to listen to Jeremy and I blather on about the deep, deep inside underbelly of the trivia world. I would encourage you to check out The Legend of Sofa Kingdom on YouTube. Those,
Oh,
yeah, that was like, geez, maybe 15 years ago that followed
I
them.
think I may have seen that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that
I'll have to
followed
check it
them
out.
to Quizzo Bowl 4, and we just completed Quizzo Bowl 19. So there you go.
Yeah.
But it basically follows them, and they're very intriguing characters. They're very interesting guys. They're brilliant. But you know, they're definitely the most iconic team in Philly Quizzo history for sure. They don't really play anymore in my regular quizzes. You know, one
Well,
of
one of them I know lives in Oregon. I think he came in
yeah,
for Quizzo Bowl, you know?
right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, Swanson. But yeah, yeah, they're kind of the measure against all other teams are measured against. I mean, they've won a couple of Geek Bowls too. So those guys are definitely legends of the Quizzo scene for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, they won the first Geek Bowl I attended, which my team ended up finishing just out of. We didn't get up on the stage. We were like in fifth place at that time. There was only, I think, three places and like a consolation fourth place prize, so we didn't get up there. But and then my Geek Bowl team also has won it twice. So there were two. They were Hall and Oates, I think, at
Yeah,
Geek Bowl,
yeah.
and my team was Shiny and Chrome. So we both have two Geek Bowl banners. I think there's a couple other team Geek Bowls.
Independence Hall the Notes.
Oh, Independence Hall and Oates. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Got to get the Philly tie-in. Yeah, there was a lot of Philly hate directed at both you and them for their dominance. I think at Geek
Well, I
Bowl,
brought a
and I
lot of
think that
that
was in
on.
fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I brought a lot of that on by
Yeah,
mocking whatever city was hosting that year's Geek Bowl. That became a recurring thing. You know, my dream job was always to be a heel wrestling manager, and so this is the closest I was ever able to get to that. Was just
yeah. Well, you played that role well, and I enjoyed it, and you know you brought out the true embodiment of I think the Philly sports fan that
yeah,
most of
no,
the country know
those are
and
some of my favorite trivia moments is just getting booed by 1,500 people at Geek Bowl. I mean,
yeah.
just an absolute rush of adrenaline.
Sure. In fact, the Geek Bowl, one of the Geek Bowls that Independence Hall and Oates ran, I believe you were on stage. You did a little rap. I think that was in Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember that, and then I've actually attended Quizzo Bowl twice. I enjoyed it. I think we had a top three finish one year, behind Sofa Kingdom, of course. But you know, that's the one title that's eluded me because I've got two Geek Bowls under my belt. I've got a Team Trivia National Championship under my belt. I had a Challenge Entertainment National Trivia League Championship under my belt. I've won the What Do You Know Tournament of Champions in Chicago a number of times, but I never got a Quizzo Bowl title. So I'll have to come out and try and get a team together that can win Quizzo Bowl.
Yeah. Well, next year, Quizzo Bowl 20 is going to be a big one.
That'll be fun. Is Fastball Bob still?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's
Okay.
still my co host. Yeah.
I think the last Quizzo Bowl I was at was when we were mourning his demise.
Yeah. Well, he has risen from the dead.
Yes, that's good. I enjoy him. All right. Well, so tell me a little bit about your game. What's the format of Johnny Goodtimes Quizzo? How many rounds is it? What are the points? Is it, do you wager? Is there a final wager? What is your style of trivia?
Well, I'll give you my little opening spiel, and then that way it'll kind of give you the background of how the quiz is set up. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Johnny Goodtimes Quizzo Spectacular. My name's Johnny Goodtimes. Here is how the game is played. We're going to go 4 rounds. We'll have 8 questions in each round. First round's the easy round. All the questions relatively easy. Round number 2, the speed round. Round number 3, the audio round. And round number 4 is the impossible round. So there you have it. Now round two will vary. I'm out of my spiel now. Round two will vary. It could be a wild card round, it could be a speed round, or it could be a 50-50 round. It just kind of depends on the week. So that one's I'm always moving that one around. But the way my quiz works is the quiz gets harder as it goes on. My quiz was inspired by Jeopardy. So I start with easy questions because when and this is kind of funny too, because when I started, people didn't really know what this was. It wasn't a big thing. And so by starting with easy questions, I was able to hook people, who
Oh,
didn't
I know the answer
really.
to that. Sure, I'll play.
Right, exactly. And it was just like, oh yeah, of course I know I know the second president was. Yeah, what the hell? Give me a sheet. And so that was a way to kind of rope people into playing. And then once you had them hooked, by the fourth round, they might not know any of the impossible round questions, but they're so deep in, they're going to play off.
And at this point, they think, well, maybe we'll win something. Who knows?
Right. So yeah. So I used to do 5 rounds. Really, after 2020, I just cut out a round and nobody complained, so I just went with it. I think people wanted to get the thing moving a little bit more. I think that's something, that's just the world we live in. The attention span's a little bit shorter. So,
it's funny because I used to do rounds of 10 questions each. And then I also shortened my game after 2020 because, again, people wanted to get in, get out. When they were coming in shortly after the pandemic, it's like, okay, we don't want to be in a place too long. We want to, so I'm out. And you know what? Nobody complained. I'm like, good. That's less I have to write every week. That's
exactly.
great.
Yeah, it's less work. I'll take it. So I go 4 rounds. Point values go up each round. First round's worth 1, second round's worth 2, third round's worth 3, fourth round's worth 5.
Okay.
So, that way you're building up to the fourth round. You're also giving everybody the eternal hope that, we might be down 10, but we still have 5-point questions ahead of us. We've got a shot.
Sure. And you don't have any final wager at the end. It's just after the end of that round.
And then I'll have a double in the first round and in the fourth round.
Okay. And does the team choose the double, or do you say this question is the double question?
Oh, yeah. No, I say, I do a whole thing with play music and, it's, oh my goodness, sounds like question number 7 is going to be.
Okay, very good. And when you do the audio round, is it, because that's round 3, you said?
Yeah.
So is it 1.5 for the song, 1.5 for the artist, or is it just 3 points?
In my bigger events, when I do Quizzo Bowl, things like that, then yes, it'll be song and artist. For just the regular quiz, it's just artist.
Okay. I like that. Makes it more accessible. And for someone like me, especially, like I'm a little hard of hearing. I've listened way too much 80s heavy metal and hard rock. And so it all blends together. For me, like that's my weakest part of trivia is listening to songs. I mean, like I know this song, but it takes me a lot longer than most people to come up with the title and artist. So if I just have to do one, it's easier on me. So I appreciate that. However, I think now if you have a game handy, whether it's this week's game, an old game, if you want to go through, I think we'll skip the audio round because I don't want to get in trouble with licensing and songs and all that jazz. But we'll do the other 3 rounds and see how a Johnny Goodtimes Quizzo game basically plays, and I'll see how well I do, and people listening can see if they beat me or want to play along.
All right. So we'll start with round 1. This is this week's easy round. I'm choosing it because it was one of my harder easy rounds, and I know you're a bit of a pro at this, so I wanted to challenge you a little bit.
Fair enough.
So round 1, the easy round. Question 1: what artist whose debut album The Chronic was released in 1992 turned 60 this week?
Don't forget about Dre, Dr. Right. Dre. Yeah.
Number 2: who co-wrote the Communist Manifesto with Karl Marx?
Joseph Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels. It is Goebbels, right? Yeah, I think it's Joseph. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with Goebbels.
That's the Nazi. Friedrich Engels.
Oh God. Yeah, I'm thinking of totally the wrong guy.
What element on the periodic table has the symbol Mg?
Mg, is that magnesium, right? Yeah, magnesium, right? Not manganese. Yeah, magnesium.
Right. Now I already gave you the next one. What car company symbol of a black horse was inspired by the logo?
That's Ferrari. So okay.
What former vice president was arrested for treason in 1807 but was found not guilty?
I think that would be Aaron Burr, sir.
Yep. Yeah. Who painted the portrait of Diego Rivera in 1937?
Okay, so now the question is, was it a self-portrait done by Diego Rivera, or was it Frida Kahlo? I'm going to assume that it was Frida Kahlo.
Frida Kahlo is correct.
Okay.
As it pertains to corporations, what does IPO stand for?
That is the initial public offering.
Correct. Finally, NBA star Shai Gilgeous-Alexander plays for what team that currently leads the Western Conference?
He is on the Thunder lead the Western Conference. He's on the OKC Thunder. Yeah.
That is correct.
All righty. So I'm 6 for 7, and that was a dumb miss. I feel bad.
Well,
I'm
yeah.
sure somebody
Well, no,
out there went 7 for 7.
We'll give you Ferrari. Hold on. So you got the double. So you have 8 points after round.
Oh, okay.
Round
Right. I'll take it. I'll take it.
All right. So round 2, and I went back a month for this because this is one I do annually, and it's one of my favorite rounds, and it's because it's a lot, it's you can kind of know it, but it's kind of guessing, and it's also fun to think about. This is bowl, not a bowl. So I'm going to give
bowl, not a bowl.
I'm going to give you a college football bowl game. You're going to tell me whether it's a bowl or just some shit I made up.
All right. Does it have to be a current bowl, or could it be like an obsolete bowl that's no longer happening?
Well, I'm going to give it such a corporate nonsense thing. It can only be that thing. Now, it could have been a bowl in 1962, but it wouldn't have had this name.
Sure,
right?
sure.
All right. So number 1, Scooter's Coffee Frisco Bowl.
Okay. Well, I know Scooter's Coffee is a thing, and I know that there is a Frisco Bowl. So I'm going to assume that is a bowl. I'm going to go bowl.
Correct. Number 2, Pringles Once You Pop Bowl.
Oh, God. I mean, obviously Pringles are a thing, but I've never heard of the Once You Pop Bowl, and I think that would have a cool trophy, and I think I would have heard of it. So I'm going to go not a bowl.
Not a bowl, correct. The Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl.
The what mowers?
Bad Boy.
Bad Boy. I've never heard of Bad Boy Mowers, but I know the Pinstripe Bowl takes place in Yankee Stadium. So maybe Bad Boy Mowers are a East Coast thing. Do I think that I'm going to go with it's a bowl. I know the Pinstripe Bowl is a thing, so I'm going to say bowl.
Correct. Yes, that's the one they play at Yankee Stadium. Number 4, Chunky Soup That Eats Like a Meal Potato Bowl.
Okay, the Idaho Famous Potato Bowl is definitely a bowl. I've got to go bowl. I love it. I'm going to say bowl.
All right, you finally.
Oh, that would have been such a good sponsor for the Idaho Famous Potato Bowl.
Right. All right, number 5, the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
That is unfortunately a bowl. I hate mayonnaise, and the fact that they douse the coach in mayonnaise just upsets me.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The KFC Finger Licking Good Bowl.
Shockingly, I don't think that is or ever has been a bowl, and I don't know why. That would be a fantastic bowl. And I mean, just think, like, the trophy could be a bucket. Like, there's so many possibilities for that. I'm going to say not a bowl.
Not a bowl, unfortunately. I mean, come on, KFC.
Yeah.
If KFC,
I think you've come up with a brilliant bowl game.
right? Number 7, the Gillette Clean Shave Bowl.
I think that is a bowl. I'm going to say yes.
Not a bowl.
Oh.
And finally, question number 8, the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl.
Oh, well, I mean, I know that they've recently, like, Gronk had a bowl. I think Jimmy Kimmel had a bowl. Why would Snoop not have a bowl? I'm going to go with yes, bowl game.
That is correct.
All right. So I missed 2 of those, I think. So that's 12 more points. I'm at 20.
You're at 20.
All right. We're going to skip the audio round. We're just going to pretend like I did great in the audio round. It was all 80s hair bands and I just rocked it. Do your audio rounds, are they normally like themed, or do you do like, we're going to get all over? We're going to do genres from the 60s classic rock to 2000s techno to,
it's all,
90s
it's always
hip hop.
It's always going to have a theme, but it is going to cover all genres.
Okay. So it could be like, these are all songs with a color in them, or,
So I'll give you, and we can kind of play through this a little. I can just give you the song titles. It's going to be hard.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, it's going to be hard, but our topic this week was artists who've changed their name mid-career.
Okay. So we're going to get a John Cougar Mellencamp song in here, I hope.
We'll see. Number 1, Cream. The song title is Cream.
Well, so there is a Cream by the Wu-Tang Clan, but I don't know that did they just go from Wu-Tang to Wu-Tang, or from Wu-Tang Clan to Wu-Tang? Let's go with Wu-Tang Clan.
Nah, that would be
Prince,
formerly known as Prince.
Prince. Yeah. I should have realized that with the theme. And
Yeah.
that one, certainly, if you'd have played the song, I'd have gotten that it was.
Dream. Right. If you heard his voice, that would have been an easy one.
Yeah.
I Need You Now. This is like
Need
a
You Now.
country group.
Yeah, that definitely sounds country. Oh yeah, that's got to be Lady Antebellum, Lady A, right?
That's correct. All right, this is the one I was actually talking about earlier. It's called Pick Up the Phone featuring Travis Scott.
Pick up the phone. So we're looking for probably it's gonna be it's gonna be like Da Baby went to Baby or little, it's gonna be one of these things. Went to
Somebody with no talent.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be somebody with like little or
That's
young
going to
in their
appeal
name.
to the 22-year-olds.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm never gonna get this, and I'm okay with just not knowing that. Who is
Okay,
it? Young or little somebody?
Yes.
Okay.
Young Thug.
Did he just go to Thug?
Now he used to be known as Sex.
Oh, okay. I did not
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, next one you'll get. Peace Train.
Oh, well, I love that song. I love it more when Richie Havens covers it, but Cat Stevens.
That is correct.
I assume you took either the old name or the new name, or did you have to go with the name?
Yeah, you give either one, but everybody
Yeah.
said Cat Stevens, not Yusuf Islam. Number 5, Disparate Youth. This is a tougher one.
Disparate Youth. That one is. I have no idea. I don't think I've ever heard of that song, and nor do I have I mean, I could guess an artist. I know it's not John Mellencamp. Trying to think of another. Is it Kesha with the dollar sign?
No, it's Santa Gold.
Santa Gold.
All right. Santa Gold.
All right.
Number 6, We Own It, featuring Wiz Khalifa.
Own It. Oh, wait. I think I think I actually do know this. What did 2 Chainz change his name from?
Yeah, you got it. 2 Chainz is correct. He was formerly known as Titty Boy.
I don't think I knew that.
All right, number 7, you'll get this. Nothing Compares to You.
Sinead O'Connor, not Prince, but
right. O'Connor.
Yeah.
And number 8, Bad Boy for Life.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we're supposed to quiz about him anymore, but
right, he's been canceled, but he did make a rare appearance in this week's quiz.
Yeah, Puff Daddy, P Diddy, no Mellencamp, no Cougar,
no Cougar. The kids aren't the kids aren't clamoring for John Cougar these days.
You're so right, because I mean, I can play Born in the USA by Springsteen in a bar, and half the people will guess John Cougar or Bryan Adams and I'm like, how much more of an iconic song can you have than Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA? So anyway, let's say I missed definitely 2 of those. So we'll say I got 6, 18. So I'm at 38 going into the impossible round here, which is worth 5 points a question, right?
Yep.
All right.
All right. So question 1, in what city will you find Texas Christian University?
Oh, TCU. Are they in Dallas? Where is... Ooh, God. I should know this better. They're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right? But I'm trying to think they're not in Dallas, so I'm trying to think if they're in Fort Worth or if they're in Arlington. I'm going to say Fort Worth.
Fort Worth is correct. Well done. OSHA is a part of what department within the federal government?
So OSHA is the Office or Occupational Safety and Hazard. So I would assume Department of Labor.
That is correct.
Okay, yeah.
Which of the 7 sisters colleges used to be called the Harvard Annex?
Okay, so it's got to be one located in Massachusetts, which I think is a lot of them. And it should be probably in the Cambridge area. So now I know Mount Holyoke, there's Smith, there's Amherst. I'm debating between Smith and Amherst. I'm going to go with Smith.
Incorrect. It is Radcliffe.
Oh, well, all right. I didn't even mention it, so I don't feel bad. Okay.
All right. Legendary musician Fela Kuti and NBA Hall of Famer Akeem Olajuwon are both from what country?
I believe that Akeem the Dream was born in Nigeria.
That is correct. And there is an amazing, by the way, just random, but the amazing mixtape on YouTube called Fela Soul, which is a mashup of Fela Kuti and De La Soul songs. It is fantastic.
Which, by the way, speaking of old school hip hop, De La Soul, probably in my top 5 hip hop groups of all time. Top of that list, without a doubt, is Tribe Called Quest. And then everything else but De La Soul, I love the Roots. I love Arrested Development. Sadly, only had a couple albums.
Right.
their debut album is one of the greatest albums, maybe of all time. So, all right, yeah. All
What
right. Anyway,
what five-letter black tea is named after the region in India where it's produced?
okay. So there is Pico tea, but is that from India? I'm trying to think. There's oolong tea. There's Darjeeling tea. Green tea is not a thing. I don't. I'm gonna go. I feel like Pico does not sound like it's from India, but I'm having trouble coming up with a different type of tea that is 5 letters. So I'm going to go with Pico, even though I don't like it.
Incorrect. It is Assam.
Ah, see, yeah, that is something I have heard of, and it just was not in my head. So
Yeah,
should have
that's a
gotten
tough
there.
one. Yeah, that's a tough
Yeah.
one. Number 6, about half of the people in Central America's most populous country are Mayan. What country is it?
Okay, so my first thought is Guatemala. We know it's not Belize. We know it's not El Salvador. Let's see. Salvador, actually, I got a Nicaragua. No, I got to go with Guatemala. I mean, that's my first instinct. I think Guatemala is pretty big. Guatemala, and I think that's where the Mayans were. So I'll go.
Yes, correct. And I think a very good example of a very important rule of Quizzo, which is when in doubt, go with your first guess.
Yeah, I think that is true throughout almost all trade. Like, I mean, like right away, I knew, last night I was playing a quiz and there was a question about a cooking term. What do you call it when you like tie up the chicken? And I had no idea. There was a couple playing next to me. The woman knew it right away, wrote it down. And then the guy's like, okay, you knew this right away. Let's go the max points. It was one of those where you wager. And she's like, oh, I'm not sure. And I heard them talking about it. And I was like, okay, you knew that so fast. You were so kind of like, go with your gut. And she was totally right. And they did go with the max wager. And I totally got it wrong. It's trussing. And I said blanching. So, but yeah, first instinct, usually the best instinct. It's rare that, especially when it's that quick. Like you said that, and right away I was like, Guatemala.
Right. That came out somewhere in your brain that, like for it to be that fast. And I definitely see teams do that because they don't trust themselves. And they're like, oh, I do that too quickly. I can't be that smart.
Yeah. Usually when you know it that quickly, there's a reason.
Right.
I've also found, by the way, and I don't know, I'd love to do an actual study on this. And I think it's kind of inherent in our education system is there is a difference between men and women when playing trivia. Men will be so positive and so sure of themselves that they're right. And a lot of times they will be wrong.
Yes.
And when a woman knows an answer right away, she will oftentimes hedge the bet and not want to seem like she knows. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it's something societal or what, but I find that women are much less confident, though when they know an answer, they're generally more often right than they are wrong. Whereas men come off as more confident and they may be right or wrong 50-50. It's like the men don't know what they're talking about, basically, is what I'm saying.
Right. But yeah, as dudes, we always pretend like
you want it. Yes, you want it. Yeah, you put up a good front, right? And I think sometimes women don't want to. And I don't know. That's maybe a sad reality.
I think that would be a very interesting, I think that would be a very interesting study for a local college.
I think it would be too.
Of the response to trivia questions, depending whether the people are male or female.
And that example, by the way, that I just gave about last night, it was the perfect example of it because this woman knew the answer. She knew it right. She wrote it down literally as the question was still being read. She wrote down the answer and was still hedging her bet, saying, I don't know if we should go with the max points. And the guy she was playing with said, you knew that too fast. We're going with the max points. And she was totally right,
Yep.
So, all right, we have, what do we got? 2 more questions left, I think.
Yep. Number 7, what NBA team made its only finals appearance in 2000, losing 4 games to 2?
So that would be the Indiana Pacers, I think. Yeah, Indiana Pacers, right?
Yep, got it. And number 8, name the 3 busiest American airports named after politicians.
Okay, well, so the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport is named after 2 mayors of the Atlanta. So that absolutely is one. So now the question is, what are Okay, so O'Hare is not named after a politician. It's named after a pilot. Well, so LAX, I think, is now named. I don't know if it's named after Bradley. I think it's named after Bradley. I'm not sure. Let's see. So Dallas is busy, Denver's busy, but I don't think either one's named after. JFK's got to be up there. So well, JFK and Hartsfield Jackson, so are 100%.
Yep, JFK, correct.
Yeah.
The third one's the toughest one.
So I'm debating. I think Harry Reid in Las Vegas. I don't think Los Angeles' airport. I think like they've named a part of it after the former mayor, but I don't think the airport is named after the mayor. So I'm going to go with Harry Reid Airport in Vegas, which I know they named after him after he passed away.
That is correct. Well done, sir.
All right. Was that so? Did you need all three to get the 5 points there? Were they
yeah, you get 5 points for two. You get 10 points if you get all three.
Oh, so that's the double.
Right. Yeah, that was the double.
Okay. All right, so, good. I got myself 10 points there. So
yeah, so you had a pretty good round there. You got 35 points that round.
So that is 68, 73 all told. What's a winning score at Quizzo normally?
That's going to be in the ballpark.
Okay.
Now, obviously, the music round will, be easier or more. Music round's kind of the big question mark, right? Because that's the one where it's that's the one when we talk about trying to be relevant to younger people. That one's big. We definitely lean more towards more contemporary music than we did in the old days. These kids today don't know that the Bee Gees ever existed, so
I did an audio round last summer and I played Hot to Go by Chappell Roan, which is all over the place now and everybody knows it, even if you're young or old or whatever. It's one of those songs that's just going to stick in the zeitgeist. But I had a team that's one of the best teams that's ever played my trivia game. They were there and they had no clue because they're all old. Yeah. And everybody else in the bar was dancing to the song and singing it. And they're like, what is this? But yeah, so
yeah. And that's the thing. Like my best team now is called Dwayne's World. They've been playing for 20 years and it's mostly older guys, but they realized that due to the music round, they had to change up their team somewhat. So they've become a more diverse team. They've got a black guy on the team. They've got a couple of young women on the team because they realized a bunch of old white dudes, when it comes to music, they're all going to be in that same, like that's the thing. I think it's important to write a quiz like that. I think it's important to write a quiz where you're like, I like to think that the more diverse your team is, the better you're going to do. Right. Like if you two people the same age, you don't have a chance because like you have to, like there's obviously going to be some people out there that are just super nerds, but like for the most part, if you really want to succeed, I think it's imperative that you try to write a quiz that is going to be covered in a lot of different ages, different races, different sexes, etc. And I think that's where
absolutely have to go. One of the best compliments I ever got about one of my quizzes was a guy who's been playing my quizzes since I've been doing them. So he's probably one of my longest time players, a guy named Paul. He's been playing 15 years. He texted me once. He's got my, we've known each other for so long. He's got my number. He texted me, he was playing my trivia. And he texted me and he said, I find your trivia biased against middle-aged white guys. I said, good. I said,
that's a good compliment. Yeah,
it's not exactly supposed to be just for you. It's for everybody. I want to have questions that you don't know and you don't maybe, you're like, I've never even heard of that. I'm going to ask about a Disney Channel original show occasionally or, it's not all going to be WWE from the early 90s or, sorry, man, you're not going to get a Hogan question every week, So,
But, sorry. I'm not going to keep driving. I'm not going to keep asking questions about Night Court. All right. So you just
Or if I do, it's going to be the new one, which I've not yet seen, but it looks cute. Mm-hmm. I know Roz just came back. I saw a commercial. So anyway, so do you have any, is there any incidents in your 20 plus years of doing Quizzo that ring out and you're like, oh my God, this was my favorite story or anything, a funny answer you can remember somebody giving you to a question or anything like that?
I mean, there's definitely Quizzo Bowl one year, people got engaged on stage. That was a pretty big.
That's nice. Have you ever officiated a wedding? You seem like the
No.
type of guy that would be a good wedding officiant.
Yeah, no, I should look into going down that path. I could use
Yeah,
a
I'm actually
side hustle.
shocked.
Yeah.
Do you know how many? I have a lot of people met playing your trivia. Like I know of
Oh, yeah,
couples that
yeah,
have
yeah.
gotten married
There
playing
you
my
go. In
trivia.
fact, I'm glad you brought that up because I'd say that is my favorite, is that 3 or 4 times I've had people reach out to me to get engaged through the quiz.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
so the way that that works is the first round, the question will be like, the oculus nerve is found where, and the answer is eye. And
The
then
eye, yeah.
zero in tennis is called what? Love.
Love,
And
yeah.
this is a female sheep, you.
You,
You know,
yeah.
and so it continues, and then it'll have like the name of the
What's the
woman.
first name of the actor who played Wesley Crusher on Star Trek? Will,
Right,
yeah.
right, exactly. And so, and then the first name of the woman will be what's the first, say the woman's name Sabrina, it'll be what tennis star, I love you, Sabrina, will you marry me? Becomes the round. And the way that I've done it is we'll do the round, and it's really funny because when I've done these, nobody's ever noticed. So it's like,
Yeah.
because the questions are so far off that nobody's looking for that. And then suddenly I'll say, hey, Sabrina, can you please read before you turn your paper in, can you please read your answers out loud? And then we'll move to round two. And then she'll
Yeah, I
read it.
actually,
And then the whole place goes nuts. And then I say
yeah.
everybody gets a perfect score for round one, and then the bar brings
I've
up
only
about.
had that happen once, but I did have that happen once at one of my quizzes where somebody went, and I did the exact same thing, right? Like I arranged the rounds so all of the answers basically formed the "Will you marry me?" and then and she had no clue until the very end of the round, and I do things where I had it on the TV, so like I had at the end of the round all the answers popped up, and then with a picture of them, and then he got down on the knee,
Oh,
and he
nice.
had in the back room he had like his whole family waiting and they run out to celebrate her family, and so it was really, really cute, awesome thing. And it's great, I mean, like, listen, trivia is a great way to get out there and meet people and meet people who have similar interests. And, there's always, you're never at a want for something to talk about, right? Because there's going to be
Right.
a question and you're,
Right.
like going to talk about the answer or talk about how you don't know the answer, or whatever.
Yeah, no, I
So,
think that we are kind of the last vestige of human face-to-face interaction. And
yeah, so much of it now is just DMing and IMing
right,
and
right. And it's
you
like
never
for
know if it's a
this,
bot or a real person.
yeah, I never thought of what we do. I've never, put too big of a importance to it. But as I get older, I start to feel like it's more important than it was 20 years ago because I feel like people now have so few excuses to talk face to face. And I think it's really to the detriment of society. And I think that in Quizzo, you have no choice. Like you're not allowed to have your phone out. It's
Yeah.
expressly against the rules. Where else in society is it against the rules to have your phone out? So
Yeah.
you have to interact human to human. And again, like, God, that is really missing. And so,
So
so it's funny because
I mean,
again, 20 years ago, it's like, oh, this is a silly bar game. And maybe I'm just getting old and sentimental, but I really feel like now, like, no, now I feel like it's more than that. I don't think it was more than that 20 years ago. Now I think that there's more to it because we are requiring that people put their phones down for the one time in their day and interact with another human being.
so that's going to bring me. I'm gonna kind of wrap it up after this, but I want to ask you one more question. Since the pandemic, there has become a prevalence, and Geeks Who Drink does this, Sporkle does this, a lot of companies do this, where it's no longer a pen and paper game, and you scan a QR code, and there's an app or something, and you're playing trivia, but you're answering on a device. And so, I personally am not a fan of that. I mean, I've played great games where you can do that, and actually I'm recording another episode with a guy. I don't know if you've heard of him, Western Massachusetts, Bobby Roast Beef. He reminds me a little bit of you, but that's the moniker he goes by. And he is a phenomenal host. And he runs a game called Speed Quizzing. It's all on the phone. And it's the best game I've ever played on a phone. And so it really like, I generally don't like the phone games. I will always take a pen and paper game over a phone. But what do you think of the proliferation of the answering on apps and devices and stuff?
Yeah, so obviously in 2020, when I moved my whole quiz online for the
Sure.
year, there was, that was the only option. And didn't create an app. We played, there was a guy out west that I know that had created a website that basically worked as an online score sheet.
We're talking about big quiz thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yep.
so utilize that. And when we went back to the bar in 2021, we started with that. And after a few weeks, people like came up to me expressly and were like, stop it, bring the paper back. Like people really
Yeah.
were passionate about the thing being analog. And
Yeah.
I think that without question, again, I think that's a really important part of the aesthetic is the fact that you're given a sheet of paper and a pencil. And it's funny because especially young people, they don't even know what a pencil is.
Yeah. Well,
You
I mean,
know?
like people don't know how to sign their name anymore, right?
Right.
Because people don't learn how to actually write in cursive. Like, when we were kids, you had to learn all your cursive letters and everything like that. You don't need that anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, you do,
Yeah.
but people
Right.
don't learn it. So
Yeah, so I'm very strongly on the side of analog. I think there's certainly a place for app trivia. I think there have been some
sure.
very good apps. I think, like I've been in bars before where there's a QR code on the screen, you scan it, and then you play on your phone. And it's a blast. It's a fun thing to do at the
Yeah.
bar where there's not a host. But I think it's really one thing that's really interesting is in the 90s, we used to play at a place called Damon's. I think it was the NTN National Trivia, something.
Sure. Now, yeah, yeah.
And that was a computerized thing. And we're talking 1995, 96. And that was a computerized thing where everybody went to the bar and they played against people all over the country. And it's kind of wild to me that trivia is one of the few things that has sort of worked backwards, right?
Yeah.
Like we've worked backwards into people wanting to have a human running the show. They don't want an AI bot running their
Yeah. It's
trivia.
just not as fun
They,
or interactive.
right, right,
You
right.
don't get the
They want the
personality. You don't.
entertainment of a human to be there. And so it's really that's been kind of amusing to me is that here we are 30 years later, and people want to play on a piece of paper with a pencil, and they want to have a human host and not a robot. Where else in society has that happened?
Yeah, no, everything else is going to automation,
Right.
and I think trivia is kind of hopefully not, and maybe reverting back to the human interaction. And like I've played, and I play games quite frequently that are answer on the phone, and they're fine. But listen, there's no way to. It's certainly ripe for people to look up answers, and it's just to me, it's not as fun, and it's not. I don't know. I like writing
And
the answers
again, I
down.
think,
Although,
I think an important part of what we do is get people off their phones.
yeah, that is true. That is true. Although I will say that, have you heard of Bobby Roast Beef, by the way?
I have not, no, but I'm
Okay, he's in
definitely
Western
intrigued to
Mass. If
hear.
you're ever up there, he
Yeah,
does a
okay.
thing called speed quizzing. And I met him last year. I played his game. I was out there for a day on my quest to play in all 50 states. And it was, I kid you not, it was real quick. His game, you don't actually, it's called speed quizzing because you don't write the full answer. You just put the first letter of the answer. And as soon as you put the first letter of the answer, you're either right or wrong. And so, like, I mean, you have a 1 in 26 chance of getting everything right, right? But it really, you can't cheat. And the questions go so quick. And then he does an audio round also. And the audio round, there's a way on the app that it's like a buzzer. And as soon as you think you know the song, you buzz in. So it's like name that tune the fastest. And the first team gets to actually name it out loud. And every other team says, well, I think they're right or I think they're wrong. And if they're right, then they get more points than everybody else. But, so the first team to buzz in gets more points. But if they're wrong, they get no points. And everybody who just, so I don't know. It was a wild game. He, like you, has a great personality for it, so, and he's got the Bobby Roast Beef moniker. And what, by the way, what made you come up with Johnny Goodtimes? Was that just because your last name is Nottingham, right? Can I,
right, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a nickname I had in college.
Okay.
A buddy of mine, Brent from New Jersey, if you said, "Hey, let's go out on Tuesday night," he'd say, "What are you, Johnny Goodtimes?" So I just always thought it was a hilarious name. So when I was on like college radio, that was my name on college radio. And
That's good. Where'd you go to college, by the way? What's your alma mater?
At University in the mountains of Appalachia, Virginia.
All right. Very nice. Well, I got to tell you, You have always been, I mean, I've said this to many people. I have played trivia. I've played maybe thousands of games. I've certainly hosted and played between thousands of games, but I've played, like I said, on 4 different continents. I have played in almost every state in the country, and you are, my friend, the cream of the crop. You are one of the best hosts that I've ever had the pleasure of playing a quiz with, and I'm glad you're still doing it. And I am thankful for you for taking the time out of your schedule to do this with me. And hopefully, this is the start of something that I want to see have some legs. And I want to talk to quiz masters all over the country. So if you're listening to this and you run a quiz, whether it's one quiz one night a week, or if it is, you have a business where you're doing 20 quizzes a week and you got people working for you, I want to talk to you. I want you to come on. I want you to tell me about what you do, how you got into it. And I want you to give me a quiz and let people see what you do. And we'll just keep doing this every week for as long as there is an interest in people wanting to hear it and people wanting to talk to me. And Johnny Goodtimes, thank you so much for being guest number 1 on Quizzing in America. And is there anything you want to say as we sign off?
No, just wanted to say thank you for having me, and yeah, I'm really excited about this project, and I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to hear from people all over the country to hear what quizzing is like in this giant nation of ours.
Yeah, it's wild. There's similarities and there's different. By the way, you ever see the Office episode where they play trivia?
Yeah.
And they write the answers on dry erase boards, right? And I saw that on the Office. I was like, who does that? You know where they do that? Kansas City. They actually, that's how they do trivia. They all have dry erase boards and they write their answers and they hold them up. And the host looks around and goes, "Oh, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're wrong, you're right, you're right." I'm like, such a weird thing. And I'm like, wow, I didn't think that actually existed somewhere. So, maybe it's elsewhere too, but the only place I've ever seen it is Kansas City. So there you go. All right. Well, that's Quizzing in America.